The soul wars escalate. All realms tremble. No faction is safe. This is the final part of our ongoing chronicle of the Soul Wars, a saga of unrelenting darkness, desperate valor, and the battle for every soul in existence. As months passed, the conflict surged beyond the borders of Shaiish. The Necroquake's aftershocks cracked the foundations of the mortal realms. Not even the Lords of Chaos remained untouched. Nagash dared to reach beyond life, beyond death, into the twisted afterlives of the damned. His ambition, to claim all souls. Even the gods of chaos could not ignore the insult. Welcome back, Traveler of the Realms. The final chapter begins now. As months and years passed, the Soul Wars escalated into a conflict of truly epic scale. It was not just order and death caught in the carnage. Every faction in every realm felt the Necroquake's touch and Nagash's ambition. The Grand Alliance of Chaos, normally enemies to all, found even their nightmare domains under threat by the great necromancer's avarice. His decree was absolute. All souls, even those of demons or chaos worshippers, were to be his. In a staggering display of audacity, his legions even invaded the chaos realm of ruin, a sub-realm of the Great Horned Rat, where the souls of treacherous Skaven go in death. Led by skeletal shock troops, flapping bat-winged vampires, and shrieking geists, Nagash's armies besieged the very afterlife of the Skaven, attempting to siphon those vermin souls into the realm of death's growing nadir. Such an affront could not stand unanswered by Chaos. Likewise, in the 8 Points, the chaos-corrupted nexus of all realms, the newly risen Mortarch, Orpheon Catacross, launched a grand invasion. With discipline and cold strategy, Catacross's Ossiarch Bone Reapers, an army of necromantic constructs forged from the bones of countless warriors, carved out an empire in the name of the Undying King. They even succeeded in establishing a foothold at the All Points Gate, the Ark's terminus, while Archaon was away on his own campaigns. For a moment, it seemed the Lord of Death might usurp chaos itself in its stronghold, but the Ever-Chosen eventually returned with his Varengard and dealt Catacross a ferocious defeat at the gates of the Varenspire, cutting down the Mortarch of the Necropolis with the Slayer of Kings. Catacross survived. Undead generals have a habit of pulling themselves back together, but the push into chaos territory was halted. The Soul Wars thus raged on multiple fronts. Order, death, chaos, and even destruction forces clashed in a sprawling tapestry of battle, alliances shifting like quicksand in the face of encroaching darkness. Throughout this era, the mortal realms themselves were scarred and transformed. In Shaiish, Nagash's power waxed ever higher as more underworlds collapsed into the Shaiish Nadir. Entire kingdoms in the realm of death were ground down to gravesand and added to the Black Pyramid's vortex. Yet seeds of hope quietly grew as well. In the realm of life, Alariel the Everqueen, sensing the imbalance wrought by so much death, began a ritual of renewal known as the Rite of Life. In secret groves, Sylvaneth wisp spirits spread new life magic, preparing to counter the pall of necromancy when the time was right. The mortal realms groaned under the weight of tragedy. Battlefields piled high with corpses, souls snatched away to torment, forests of gallows erected by conquering undead to punish the defiant. But the living refused to surrender. Ordinary humans, Dwarden, and elves formed caravan crusades, the seeds of the coming Dawnbringer Crusades, to flee besieged lands and found new refugees, sometimes literally building their cities atop the bones of the dead. Even some undead turned against their former master. Free-willed vampires and deluded flesh-eater courts pursued their own agendas, occasionally clashing with his forces in their hunger-driven wars. The Soul Wars were thus a time of unending strife, where every dawn was hard-won and every night brought fresh terrors. After years of grueling conflict, the denouement of the Soul Wars arrived in a blaze of light and a shuddering of worlds. Sensing that the death god's victory neared, for even gods of order could feel realm of death's deathly pull, Teclis, the elven god of light, resolved to confront the great necromancer head-on. Teclis, ever the mage king and seeker of balance, could not abide the unchecked spread of necromancy, which defiled the natural order. Thus began the War of Light and Death, the climactic confrontation pitting Teclis and the Lumineth realm lords of Hysh against Nagash and his undead legions. On the battlefields of Shayish's Asperian Empire, Teclis unleashed the brightest energies of Hysh in a campaign to cleanse the realm of death. The Ossiarch legions of Cataclysm met them in pitched battle, unyielding phalanxes of bone against shining elven phalanxes. The earth shook with cataclysmic magic as Teclis summoned living constellations and hurled suns of pure light, while the Mortarchs countered with storms of soul-stealing sorcery. Incarnations of light and death in terrible splendor. Their duel high above the battlefield is the stuff of legend. Teclis with the Moonblade, casting illuminant spells that could unmake the undead, and Nagash wielding all the collected spite and sorrow of the deceased like a funeral shroud. In a confrontation that blazed across the firmament, Teclis struck the decisive blow. The god of death was cast down, his corporeal form was broken and banished by the searing light of Hysh. With an agonized howl that echoed through every spirit, his essence was driven into retreat, spiraling back to Nagashizar in defeat. The Shayish Nadir suddenly destabilized. The great necromancer's binding spells unraveled, and the oppressive flood of death magic began to ebb at long last. In that moment, Alariel's long-prepared rite of life burst forth in full power. Verdant jade energy, the raw power of life itself, erupted across the realms. Where moments before bleak necromantic gloom had hung, now blooms of glowing green life spread. The wave of life magic swept away mists of death and set forests sprouting from battlefields littered with bones. Souls trapped in anguished half-life found release as blooming vines and soothing green light enveloped them. The balance between life and death, badly upset by the necroquake, began to right itself. Nagash's defeat at Teclis's hands marked the end of the Soul War's main chapter. The curse of the necroquake was finally dispelled, its unnatural sorceries diminishing. Though many undead still lingered, for such vast necromantic creations do not vanish overnight, the driving will behind them had been checked. The mortal realms breathed a collective sigh of relief and mourning. In the wake of the Soul Wars, lands were changed irreversibly. Great swathes remained under the control of his lieutenants, forming the seeds of a new ossified empire of death. The Stormcast Eternals had held fast, but at grievous cost. Many chambers were decimated, and the toll on their immortal souls was a burden they would carry forever. Yet hope resurfaced like a dawn sun after the longest night. Life magic now suffused the realms, empowering those who would rebuild. In bright contrast to the endless legions of undeath, new life sprang up. Crops in once barren fields, cleansing rain in ashen wastelands, even newborn gods. The cruel Kragnos, unleashed by the rite of life, but that is another tale. The Soul Wars left an indelible mark on the mortal realms. In their wake, the peoples of the realms understood both the terrible cost of ambition and the price of survival in a world of ceaseless war. The conflict had been epical in scale, not merely armies clashing, but the fundamental forces of life, death, light, and darkness doing battle through mortal proxies. The stories of this era are whispered around campfires in every realm, of ghostly hordes lit by witchlight, of stormcast heroes standing like golden statues against tides of the dead, of entire cities consumed by grieving fog, and of a lone light that stood against the darkness when all others dimmed. Though Nagash was cast down, he was not destroyed. An ancient evil like him never truly dies. Even now, in the gloom of Nagashazar, the undying king surely plots his resurrection and revenge. The Night Haunt continue to haunt the edges of civilization, and undead warlords carve out domains whenever vigilance falters. But the mortal realms have entered a new chapter, often called the Era of the Dawnbringer Crusades, fueled by the hope kindled after the Necroquake's end. In the cities of Sigmar, new hosts of settlers venture out to reclaim the lands lost to Death's Pall, their armies bolstered by newfound faith and the life-giving energies coursing through creation. The living and the dead remain locked in an eternal balance. Neither can ultimately triumph, for one gives rise to the other. This is the truth that the Soul Wars made plain. In the end, the Soul Wars were a testament to the imperishable spirit of the mortal realm's inhabitants. Even faced with obliteration of the soul itself, they fought on. In the climactic closing of this dark saga, as a rejuvenating dawn spread over battlefields of bones, a message rang clear. However thick the darkness, the light of courage and unity can break through, if only for a time. The realm of death had risen to claim all, and for a moment all creation trembled on the precipice, but life and hope endured. Gravitas hangs about the memory of those days. The Soul Wars will be spoken of for generations in reverent, fearful tones, a time when heroes and villains alike walked the boundary between life and death. And though Nagash was humbled, he still watches, patient and immortal, from the shadows. The lesson of the Soul Wars is that vigilance must never cease. For as long as mortals dream and gods scheme, the epic war for the soul of the realms will go on, undying and eternal. If this tale stirred you, strike your hammer down upon the like button. Share your thoughts in the comments, and tell us what darkness you would see unveiled next. And above all, subscribe. Join us as we continue our journey through the war-torn legends of the mortal realms. 'Cause for how does one destroy what is already dead?